The measure of who we are is what we do with what we have. Truer words have never been spoken by Coach Vince Lombardi. The Packers dig deep to show the Saints what they can do with what they have next on your Packers Fan Podcast.
Hey Packers fans, this is your unofficial Packers Fan Podcast, and these are the podcasters you're looking for. One of these guys has been to the birthplace of Curly Lambeau, and the other guy, well, he has too. And now it's time to go, Pack, go, with your hosts, Wayne Henderson and Troy Heinritz.
This is your Packers Fan Podcast, the show by and for fans of your 13-time NFL champion Green Bay Packers. Welcome back. It is so good to have so much listener feedback to play later in the show, but we want to hear you for next week's episode as well. Give us a call at 920-3PACK-GO, which is 920-372-2546, or go to PackersFanPodcast.com/feedback. This time around, it's episode 142, and it's October 18th, 2017, and the show notes will be at PackersFanPodcast.com/142.
On this week's edition, we'll be talking about the Packers' next man up philosophy is in play, now more than ever. We're hoping for another magic number 7 at quarterback for the Packers. Plus, the latest injury updates, transactions, news, and holy crap, there's a lot this week.
Can't wait. Also got my favorite tidbits from the Saints at Packers Dope Sheet. And Troy, you're going to have your keys to the Packers somehow being victorious, even without AR-12, when the Saints come marching in. And even more great feedback from you, the G-Force. I'm at Wayne Henderson, your voice acting, podcasting part owner of your 13-time NFL champion Green Bay Packers.
And I'm at Troy Heinritz, a proud owner of the soon-to-be NFC North Division champions, yet once again, your 2017 Green Bay Packers.
Love it.
Oh, yeah. I made the declaration. You heard it here.
Heard it here first.
All right. The Packers Fan Podcast is available on demand and on the go with our free Packers Fan Podcast apps for both iOS and Android. You're going to want to download those today because if you do, heck, even if you don't, found out some really cool stuff because those apps are powered by Spreaker. And if you actually have one of those cool Amazon Echoes or Dots or Shows or whatever the heck they are, if you have one of those Amazon Alexa devices, you can now download the Spreaker skill. That's right. If you go to Amazon and search for Spreaker skill, you can add that to your Alexa, and then you can say something like, Alexa, play the Packers Fan Podcast. And boom, right there in your home on your Alexa speakers around the house, you can get us. So that'd be really, really cool if you do that.
Please do. I tested that out myself, and I was surprised. Packers Fan Podcast is, I guess it's provided by TuneIn on some of the Alexas or whatever those different things are called.
I don't even know where to start because, yes, technically Mike Pereira is right that he was on the run. He was out of the pocket. Therefore, he is legal to be hit. But I'm sorry, when the ball is completely out of Rodgers' hands and he's got 2 steps before he hits the quarterback, it's one thing if you want to give him a nice shove and throw him to the turf, but to wrap him up with all of your 200-plus pound body and slam him into the ground like that, it's just uncalled for, and I sure hope there's a fine handed down for that.
I totally agree. I've watched that so many times, and he definitely had an opportunity to pull up, and then to find out that there were some Vikings fans high-fiving and cheering that Aaron Rodgers got hurt. I cannot wait for revenge at the end of this season.
Not to mention the Viking fans themselves that were just all over the interwebs, like just cheering for the fact that somebody got hurt. I mean, that's not cool, man. I mean, these are people's livelihoods. Granted, Rodgers probably has enough money in the bank already, but we don't know his financial situation. But I mean, it's just wrong because this is, a sport people love, is a sport that people want to watch. It's a business. There's ratings involved. And when you have one of your star quarterbacks of the league out, I mean, ratings tank quickly.
Amen to that. I mean, whether it's good or not, that's the way it is. If Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers is not playing, it's just like when Brett Favre finally did retire. Something was missing from the NFL. So get well soon, Aaron Rodgers. And in Hundley we trust for now.
Sure we do. We also need to trust in a few other people.
That's
How about
true.
the defense? The defense, of all things. We had 2 takeaways in this game. that were pretty awesome. And I have to say, Clay Matthews running down the field, that was actually both an awesome yet funny sight at the same time.
True, but I'm just glad he covered some serious ground. And it was fantastic to see that. And the other interception, was it Demarius Randall again?
It was a Demarius Randall again. Now, this one was a little bit not as flashy as the touchdown, but at the same time, if the balls are landing in Demarius's hands, maybe things like you said, after that little tussle and the, go sit out and go home and leave without telling anybody, maybe all of that really helped out our situation with Demarius, and he's got his mind focused on things now. And I like it if he's catching the ball. That's a good sign. Yeah,
if we can have an interception and a fumble recovery every single week, things are looking very bright. As is Kenny Clark from here in the IE. He is living up to the potential, man.
Yeah, so far so good. And Mike Daniels was back out on the field. So here's hoping that we can stop the running game coming into the Saints next week, because if we can look like we did against Seattle from our defensive perspective, things might be just okay.
Yeah, with more and more people starting to get healthy, even though at the same time we're dropping other people left and right with injuries. It's the story of the Packers.
I mean, how do you start a game with 3 offensive linemen? Granted, they weren't healthy to begin with, but to have 3 offensive linemen go down and have Quentin Rollins go down, I mean, it's just like we should be looking at maybe new team physicians, trainers, nutritionists. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the equipment managers with bad cleats or something. We just got to have something to explain what's going on in Green Bay. This is ridiculous.
We have a caller that asks about that later in the show when we get into the listener feedback. And I just don't have an answer. I can't imagine what could be at fault. But the injury bug is turning into a full-blown epidemic. And I was listening to the first part of the game on the radio, and they made a statement about this is the Packers' first time that they've had, their main offensive line all together all season.
And then that's the dreaded sports commentary thing. The minute you said, it's the first time all 5 have been together. Oh, wait, no, there goes, oh, no, there's another one.
Yeah. So
Mason Crosby has not missed a field goal in 18 tries. Dong. You never talk about what is, because then it won't be.
Exactly. So I'm not going to make any crazy statements like that. But
definitely not. Definitely not.
It was just one of those things. And hopefully this is one of those, of course it's mostly because of the injuries, but maybe it's one of those games and we've got it out of the way so we don't need to worry about something weird happening like losing to the Browns or something.
Now, I have to say, all things aside, when you look at this game on paper, Brett Hundley did a pretty decent job. I know everybody's going to be like, oh, but he threw 3 interceptions. Dude, 2 of those interceptions were tip balls. So
True.
It's not like it was Hundley just throwing it off to a completely random spot that nobody was supposed to be at. And for the most part, he drove the ball down the field fairly well and very consistently. So if it wasn't for that, very freakish, couldn't hang on to the ball stretch by Ty Montgomery at the goal line, that puts the game at 14-14 at that point. So it could have been a completely different game if that touchdown actually happened and stood.
Agreed. And to see what he might be able to do after a full week of practice with the first stringers. I mean, he's been in the system almost 2.5 years. This guy knows the offense. He just has to implement it.
Yeah, and you really have to look at that offensive line, because regardless of who you put out there quarterback, whether you want to talk about Kaepernick or Romo or all the other crazy crap that was flying around this week, I mean, nobody's going to survive behind the offensive line as it stands right now, because it's a patchwork thing. I have other choice words to say about it, but our second string is not that great when it comes to the offensive line. We noticed that in the preseason that the second string was really a porous mess. So at this point, it's not a Hundley problem. It's an offensive line problem. And we need to fix that, because without an offensive line, we don't have a running game either. And that's what could really help Hundley out, is if we can use the double tandem of Jones and Ty in order to run the ball to take that pressure off of Hundley having to make sure he does everything.
Yeah, we need to get things shored up. On the plus side, we're back at Lambeau, familiar territory. And although the Saints did have a convincing victory this past weekend, that was at home. They always play well at home. And
you say convincing, and I don't agree with you, because yeah, sure, they scored 2 touchdowns, right? And one of those was off of a turnover. So if you take the turnover out of the equation, it's a lot closer than you think. Because remember, in the second half, it was only 3 field goals that the Packers gave up. So, I mean, the defense did a pretty decent job holding them to field goals, which makes it a pretty easily winnable game, especially if we would have gotten that touchdown. I mean, putting up another one wouldn't have been too difficult to make it a close game.
No, I meant the Saints had a convincing victory.
Oh, the Saints definitely had a convincing victory. That was ridiculous. I mean, 2 turnovers in the end zone, your own end zone. That was pretty brutal.
But the Saints always do well at home, and they almost never do well on the road. But we'll touch on the Saints later on.
Yeah. Let's get into the listener feedback, because I'm curious what people are saying out there as far as whether they like Huntley, whether they don't like Huntley. I mean, how dire are things amongst the Packers fan podcast fandom?
Let's get to it. A lot of them came in the day of the game, so the loss was fresh in everybody's mind. But regardless, we're here to address it and share your feedback. Take it away, Curtis.
Hello, guys. First long-time listener, first-time caller. This is Curtis from Fort Benning. This is the first time, my faith in the Packers, quote unquote, has been rocked. That the injury to Rodgers completely devastates us, in the season. And this season has always had the air of, Super Bowl or bust. And right now we're busted. So, all this talk about bringing in new quarterbacks is kind of nonsense, because the only reason we brought in so many quarterbacks in 2013 is because, not only did Aaron Rodgers got hurt, Seneca Wallace got hurt, and then we had problems with Tozine, and so then they finally settled on him. So long as Hudley, remains healthy, we won't, I think, bring in any more QBs. But, since this is kind of a bust of a season now, why should I hope that the Packers win? Much less the draft pick, but, why should I revive my faith? Help me enjoy the rest of this football season, because right now it's looking pretty grim. Bye-bye.
Curtis, thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, grim is kind of a hard word to swallow. When you think about what happened in 2013, and I'm not talking about Rodgers and the collarbone and him coming back and still making the playoffs and all that jazz, because he did land on his left collarbone at that point versus the right collarbone, which is this situation, which is his throwing arm. I'm talking about the fact that we had Seneca Wallace, we brought in another guy, and then it ends up being good old Matt Flynn. And remember, Matt Flynn wasn't part of the team at the time. We had to bring him back. But what Matt Flynn knew, and why we brought him back, was he knew the system. He knew the offense. He knew how to execute it. And I think those are the key messages that we have to remember here, is that Brett Hundley has been groomed in this offense for 3 training camps, 3 OTAs. He's been with the team. And even Joe Callahan's got 2 years. So if something happened to Hundley, or Hundley's not performing, and you throw Joe in there, Joe can probably do just as good of a job as well. You remember, we were super high on Hundley. I mean, he had over 100 quarterback rating in the preseason action that he had over the last 3 years, even though his preseason this year wasn't as stellar, but he was also, had a nagging injury that he was dealing with as well. So there's a lot here that it's not a quarterback problem. First and foremost, if we have a decent offensive line, we have a great running game that we could take advantage of to help out the quarterback situation, and we have injured cornerbacks, injured secondary. And so that's a horrible, horrible mix. Like, I wouldn't focus on the quarterback situation at all. I mean, granted, AR-12 is the best in the game right now. Even when he's not in the game, he's still the best in the game. But at the same time, no quarterback is going to succeed behind no offensive line and no defense to keep it close enough to make them successful.
And in fact, Curtis sent us a Twitter reply just last night saying, I know I sent you guys a pretty bleak voice message, but I'm feeling a bit better now. I'm beginning to warm up to Hundley. All is not lost.
If you need another reason to look at this, I mean, just look at the schedule ahead of us.
Yes.
Okay, so the schedule is very favorable in a lot of ways. And there are maybe four teams I can see on there, right? Obviously, we have a couple bouts against Matt Stafford and the Lions. We obviously have New Orleans with Drew Brees. There's a couple games on the schedule where you go, that secondary, even with Rodgers, it'd be a really hard sell to win that one. So let's say we drop those 4 games, you're still looking at 10-6, and 10-6 will win the North this year easily because the Bears aren't any good. Minnesota can't figure out which quarterback to play on a week-to-week basis, and they have a running back by committee situation. I mean, the Lions are the only competition, and if you can split with the Lions, then you're at 11-5. I mean, 11-5 is a great record.
And even the Lions are having a lot of problems with Matthew Stafford right now. He's not all that healthy himself. The whole NFC North and the quarterback situation, the playing field's pretty level. And like you said, a lot of very winnable games in the rest of the schedule. The one that worries me right now is going to Carolina, but that's a month and a half away. We'll worry about that a long time from now.
Yeah, that's one of those 4 games. I mean, you think about it. If you can even pull out 1 or 2 of those 4 games, you're still at 12-4. That's pretty freaking fantastic. I mean, give McCarthy a medal if he can make that happen.
Absolutely.
Hey guys, this is Cameron from Georgia. How sad was that? I know y'all are going to talk about it on the show, but in Hudley we trust. And I think that this season is going to show us what McCarthy's made of, what our defense is made of, and what Hudley's made of. We put him in this position, see if he can work on it. Love the show. See y'all guys later.
Cameron, thank you so very much for giving us a call at 920-3PACK-GO. Great points. It's going to show us a lot. And I think things are a lot brighter than what they appear on the surface with people starting to get healthy. I think things are going to be okay. It's not going to be easy, but I think they're going to be okay.
And I think the benefit we have, too, is that, this week might look a little rough around the edges, but then we go into the bye week.
Mm-hmm.
So you figure out, you get some game film of the new offense, if we want to call it that. And once we have some game film to work on, we get a whole 2 weeks to really figure out what's the new installed offense that we're going to go forward with for the rest of the season. So I think the timing of this works in our favor. And because of that, it also helps us get a few people healthy for the back half of the season to make that, next 8-game run.
And to make it even sweeter, the first game after the bye week is still at home at Lambeau Field.
Correct. So, smiling
down. I'm Trey in LA.
Oh, sorry, Troy.
Oh, you're fine.
This is Andre in LA. Go Pack Go. Pretty devastated, not so much about the loss, but to the Vikings, but the loss of Aaron Rodgers possibly for the season. It was a bitter pill to swallow yesterday. But as I wrote on Instagram, this will test our Packer fan resilience. We still got to support the Packers. Maybe we can, by some miracle, make the playoffs and Aaron Rodgers comes back and we go on an incredible playoff run. I'm going to keep the faith. Still green and gold till I'm dead and gold. Maybe we can see something, positive from Brett Hundley. I'll let you guys break down the X's and O's. I just wanted to continue to show my support and love for the Packers. Go Pack Go.
Andre, dude, man, I feel for you. But if you're going to say go Pack Go, say go Pack Go. Own it, man. It's okay. Be excited about it, people are sad and let down and, Super Bowl or bust and all that stuff. But if you say go Pack Go, you got to mean go Pack Go every time you say it. Because that's what we do. We rise up and we do exactly what Lombardi said, right at the top of the show. The measure of who we are is what we do with what we have. And we've always said in Ted We Trust, we have a team, it's put together, we have the people, we just got to make it all work with what we have, and we can make it work with what we have. And if we can't make it work with what we have, well, then we know this is the big year for the Dom Capers firing and the cornerback coach firing and the team doctor firing and blah, 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 blah. But I think when you look at it on paper, every single one of these players that is out there on the field today should be able to execute against the schedule that we have upcoming. There's no doubt in my mind that we can go worst case 8-8, which could still make the playoffs in the NFC this year, depending on how things shake out.
That's very true. That's very true. And Andre, if by some chance 8-8 doesn't win the division and we go in as a wild card, Packers could be coming to LA to play the Rams. I'll see you there.
I know. Whoever would have thought we'd be talking about the Eagles being like the best of the NFC at this point.
Every season, there's just storylines that you can't make up. I mean, Jay Cutler and the Dolphins coming from down big time to take the lead and win their game. You just never know.
So my thoughts today were, I live on the East Coast. I didn't even expect the game to be on TV. So I heard about Aaron getting carted off by my husband, who called me and said Aaron got carted off. And
then you were so shocked that your call cut off. I'm sorry we didn't get your name or the rest of the call, but what a way to find out about Aaron being carted off the field is by a phone call, because the stinking game was not on TV in most areas.
I know, it wasn't here either. And I mean, when you have Aaron Rodgers as your starting quarterback on your fantasy football team,
oh no,
that's not the way you want to find out about what happened, because my phone like literally blew up. I mean, to the point where I thought the battery was going to explode. I was getting so many like messages from Yahoo and ESPN and all the people that are hitting Facebook and Twitter. And it's like, what just happened? It was bad news for Packer fans. But at the same time, you know, again, the rest of the game may not have looked like it was a win, but I think it was pretty good for the fact that he had to come in on last minute notice and execute a game plan that he wasn't part of earlier in the week. Once you get a game plan for Hundley this week and you know exactly what you're up against, plus you get the home crowd in your favor, we need to make sure that all 78,000 plus strong at Lambeau Field this coming Sunday are roaring big time in support of Hundley. Give him all the confidence he can have. Because, man, it's going to be fun. If he can pull out a victory, that's one of the four right there.
Yeah, unfortunately, the quarterback situation, nobody got injured on that front during the game, because I think at that point, until some things transpired over the last day or two, Randall Cobb was the emergency, like, third-string quarterback.
Correct.
Now, that would have been exciting to see, but let's keep him strong and healthy as well. And speaking of confidence, I saw a photo on Twitter and Facebook this evening that apparently Aaron Rodgers has passed on his championship belt to Hundley, and he was trying it on. So
nice.
Can I get a go Pack go?
Go Pack go.
Hey guys, this is Steven Redeker calling from Montana after moving here from North Dakota. So to answer your guys' question from last week. All right. So, rough game. Rodgers, hopefully he'll come back. But was it just me, or for a first game without having any practice this week, did Hundley look better than he could have? It wasn't a perfect game by any means, but he did get some good passes out there. It's a start. We gotta hope for the best. Anyway, go back, go. Green and gold till I'm dead and cold.
Thanks so much, Steven. Yeah, thanks for clarifying as well. Just making sure North Dakota wasn't part of Montana or some succession or something happened. That'd be really crazy there in the middle states of the country. But the big thing that we have to think about here is that you have Hundley, who did, like I said, fairly well in this game. And you remember, Hundley was also a mobile quarterback in the preseason, and most of our offense is designed around those scramble drills. So if you have a scrambling quarterback and you practice scramble drills, well, then we should literally have the exact same offense that we had with Aaron Rodgers. The question will be, how accurate is Hundley this year in comparison to his two preseasons where he was deadly accurate, almost 70% completion rate? I mean, if he's got that same kind of numbers, the offense will be fine. It's the protection again. We have to figure out who is going to be protecting Hundley from being, again, the most sacked quarterback in the league like Aaron Rodgers was over the last few weeks. So that's the big thing we have to figure out, is how do we get protection? And with that protection, how does that open up the running game so we could take advantage of it? And I think that's something that was really lacking when you looked at the running game against Minnesota, is that Ripkowski has never been on the field when the running backs are on the field, if at all. And if it's there, it's very infrequent, and it's for extra pass protection because the offensive line is so bad. When you look at it from that perspective, we need lead blockers. So you need to have either a wishbone situation or a split back or at least strong eye or weak side eye in order to make sure that there's a lead blocker for our running backs because the holes aren't there on the offensive line. So I would like to see some more 2-back sets with Ripkowski in there blocking because I think that'll open up the running game for us, which then should make the passing game a little bit easier.
Agreed. It's all about momentum and let the running back build up ahead of steam and block for him, and let's see what happens. Yeah, we got to get the running game going this weekend. I have a feeling that it might just happen.
Hey, Wayne, Troy, me, Art from Texas. Again. Sorry, no, I just didn't have time to call earlier during the week. Been really busy at work. But I'm sure by now you all know that McCarthy and the Packers decided to stick with Huntley, which I understand his decision. I mean, no sense in wasting more time and money on somebody coming in from the outside who would have to learn the system, from the beginning, from the get-go. And if it's only going to be for a year, hopefully, why waste time and money when Huntley is there, at our organization of it. So it makes sense. However, I still think that Minnesota defender, I keep forgetting his name, should still get fined or suspended for that intentional hit on Rodgers. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely, Art. And thanks again for calling in again. You had another call or two right after the game, but a lot of those things kind of sorted themselves out, and we talked about them earlier in the show. But I thank you for that call. And I, for one, I don't know if it's too late for that Minnesotan to be fined, but I think that he should be. What I think's going to happen, I've heard some rumblings that they are already talking about changing the rule for next season where this would have been a penalty. Well, if the refs would have seen it.
I'm okay from the penalty perspective. I mean, the rule's the rule. I mean, if he's on the run and moving, he is a legitimate target. I think the question becomes, if you're still going to talk about, roughing the passer, if the ball is gone, he could have just as easily, ran into him and knocked him over with his body weight. It's the wrapping and the falling on him to the ground that I think was completely unnecessary. And I think that's why Rodgers was pretty pissed off about it when you saw him jawing back at him on the sideline, is that he could have literally came up to him. He could have pulled back. I mean, he would have hit Rodgers. Rodgers might have still fallen down, but you wouldn't have 240, 250 pounds of extra weight coming down on that clavicle. Now that's the thing that you have to prevent.
Yeah, and I think that's where the rule change is going to touch on it. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but if we would have been playing on natural grass instead of artificial turf, it might not have been quite as bad.
Agree. Could have just been a sprained wrist or something.
So, oh well. It is what it is.
Caleb Fisher checked in and he said, I wanted to say, although we played horribly, I didn't think we played that bad. We need to make sure we don't have another bad game such as this one. I also wanted to ask you guys if you thought the sack on A-Rod was a clean one. I also thinking we need to think about firing the conditioning coach. We can't keep getting the same people hurt. Until next time, go Pack Go, bleeding green and gold till dead and cold. Caleb Fisher in Oconto Falls, Wisconsin.
Go Pack Go.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't play horribly. I mean, the ball was moving. It was in the red zone twice. I mean, we held them to 3 field goals. I mean, it was a pretty tight game that was very winnable. We just didn't do it as quickly and as methodically as we wanted to. So I wouldn't say it was a horrible game. It was an effort that it was a mountain that was a little bit too big last week. So we're just going to make sure we get a smaller mountain by playing at Lambeau.
Winning the coin toss and taking the ball.
Yes, no deferment. Let's just make a statement this week. This is the week to come out and just take the ball and punch it down their throats.
Yeah, so we're not going to change the whole viewpoint on deferment just because of Hundley instead of Rodgers is playing at quarterback.
Right.
Okay, just checking. We also heard in our Facebook Packers Fan Podcast community group, got a message from Jeff saying, hey, gents, this is Jeff from Tucson. Thanks for all you do for creating such an engaging and informative show each week. You're very welcome. As a Wisconsin native currently living in Arizona, previously planned my trip to Lambeau for October 22nd, thinking I'd see the showdown between two future Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Now it's up to Brett Hundley to lead the pack until AR-12 returns. And like Coach McCarthy, I believe he's up to the challenge. I will be sporting my Jordy Nelson jersey at Lambeau this Sunday with a brand new UCLA cap to show off my support for number 7. It's also a bit of a nod to Kenny Clark, but mostly for Brett and not the Brett who replaced our previous number 7. Also, seeing Bart Starr back in the stadium this weekend will be special. He is the epitome of a class act. As always, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go indeed. Yeah, Bart Starr will just bring the magic. That'll help it out for sure.
He may want to suit up.
Hey, and I have to say, you could still be going to watch 2 future Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
It's possible. It's very possible.
You know, Hundley could make the Packers Hall of Fame.
Hey, it's too early to tell, but I could see it happening.
Totally. I mean, what if Rodgers doesn't come back and Hundley takes us all the way to the Super Bowl?
What if? What if?
Stranger things have happened. Stranger Things comes out October 27th on Netflix.
That's what you call a segue right there. And Jeff, you talk about Stranger Things, that the changing of the weather patterns from Wisconsin to Tucson. Yeah.
It might feel like Tucson up there in Green Bay this weekend. It got another, not as hot as it was at the beginning of the year for me, but it's still pretty warm up there in northern Wisconsin for this time of year.
I had heard rumors and seen memes all over the internet that winter's coming.
Oh, that's been coming for since 2011.
What's funny is
that's a different winter's coming meme.
Back on the TV show thing. What's funny is here in Southern California, at least in my area, this Friday, the high is only going to be 67.
Ooh,
but
comfortable.
Next Tuesday, we're going to be 96. So got that to look forward to.
Is what it is. At least you're not riding out tropical storms up there in the UK like Brett Connor was.
True.
He posted that he hopes that we have enough of a team to finish the season. And make sure you check out the thread in the Facebook community group because there is a ton of great responses on Brett's post specifically. So make sure you go check that out in our Packers Fan Podcast community group. That's packerscommunity.com. It'll take you right over there.
That is such good stuff. And our weekly Monday Twitter poll and Packers Fan Podcast community Facebook group poll. Got to get used to covering both of them. With AR-12 being out for a couple of months, who do you think will be the Packers offensive MVP or MVPs in October and November? Because December is a long way away. So 24% of the folks that voted said Brett Hundley. 41% believe the wide receivers, the entire core of wideouts, will be the MVPs. Whereas 32% voted that the running backs will be the actual MVPs of the Packers in October and November. And 3% put other. We had a write-in vote for Mike McCarthy that he will be the offensive MVP.
The coach.
If we win the division in a first-round bye, like you said, Mike McCarthy gets a medal.
That's for sure. Wow. Peter Allison also said, "This is absolutely devastating. Rodgers has been the one to drag this team to so many wins, and I fear it is now when we realize that it may be time to change a coach and someone who can get the best out of our whole team and Rodgers." Mike McCarthy didn't give Hundley a chance. His often boring, predictable, and limited play calling won't work with Rodgers not there to save him. Don't get me started on the defense, but green and gold till I'm dead and cold. From Peter. No, I don't think so. The defense has been better this year than it has been in past. It's still not the greatest, but it's been better. And I think when we get some of those cornerbacks back, I mean, you got Devon House has barely played the season. I mean, that was a big get to bring back into the fold for the leadership perspective. Then you got Kevin King, who was out. I mean, if you get those guys back, plus Morgan Burnett's been out. So, I mean, if you get some of those players back, I think we have a very interesting secondary. We just haven't been able to see them all work together at the same time. And then now with Mike Daniels back, that helps out with the run game too.
Very, very true. And as far as McCarthy not giving Hundley a chance, I think that with Aaron Rodgers going down, I mean, the Aaron Rodgers went down. I think McCarthy, the entire coaching staff, and half the people on the field were just so stunned that, you know, what do you do? What do we do? What do we try? Might as well stick with boring and predictable till we get this week of practice. I think you're going to see a totally different Packers team take the field. at Lambeau Field.
Practice?
Well,
definitely.
Practice leads to playoffs.
Playoffs?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. The injury report, Wayne.
Oh, my
this
goodness.
Thing is like... I could actually wallpaper my new house with this injury report. That's how much there is.
That's not the kind of wallpaper I want to see, because I had, before you dig into the Packers injury report, which is obviously back up above 10 players, I saw the Saints injury report. It's got 2 people. What is the deal? 2.
It's so confounding. And I think there was like 6 players on the injured reserve, remember, too. So it's not just that these are the players that are on the injury report. There's also the other players that are on either the PUP list or the IR list.
Mm-hmm.
And that list is fairly extensive as well. But looking at the injury report, you have, of course, Bakhtiari and Balaga back there. Balaga was actually down for concussion. So it was different than what he had previously. So that'll be interesting to see how that concussion protocol goes, if he even was able to go. He was a limited participant today, so maybe there's a chance he'll go this week. You still have Quentin Dial out with the chest injury with limited participation, as well as Devon House, also with the quadricep issue. Now, the good thing is that Kevin King was actually a full participant at practice today, so he seems to have cleared the concussion protocol, so that's a good sign. Ty is obviously full strength, so hopefully that'll be good there. But you still had Lane Taylor at the guard position. He is down with an ankle, did not participate today. And the funny part was that we were down so many cornerbacks, we were like, who the heck is Lindsey Pipkins?
I don't know.
But it doesn't matter because he's on the injury report too.
Oh, my goodness.
The cornerbacks, they are a few and far between. So it's going to be interesting when you think about what our cornerback situation is going to look like in the secondary. I actually said on Sunday, put Jeff Janis at cornerback because at least he can run fast and he can catch a ball.
It's worth a shot, Troy. I am all for it, because we just need to make it through this Saints game on Sunday with no new injuries, go into that bye week, and come back as healthy as possible and just smoke people.
Yeah, so definitely keep an eye on the participation reports this week. Friday, obviously, being the one that bears the most bearing on what will happen on Sunday. There's a lot of people out there. And because of all the stuff that happened, transaction news is like off the charts this week. Because AR12 went down, and there's the new rule this year about the whole, you could bring 2 people back off of the injured reserve list. So they didn't want to put AR12 on there because there are 2 people on the injured reserve list that could still technically come back and play this season. So the challenge that we have now is that we had to make a spot for Joe Callahan to come up because we didn't want to put Rodgers on the injured reserve list. So that means somebody had to get added to the injured reserve list. And unfortunately, that was Quentin Rollins.
Oh, no.
So Quentin Rollins is now on the IR, and again, could be reactivated after the 8-week period. So we have Quentin Rollins on IR, but remember, we also have Don Barkley on the IR and Jason Spriggs on the IR. So if we're looking at needing offensive linemen, we could think about turning Barkley and Spriggs when they're healthy, of course. Not sure what their recovery speed is at this point, but those guys could come off of the IR and then be able to help out that offensive line. And then when you look at it from that perspective, having Quentin Rollins move down, obviously you had Joe Callahan gets promoted from the practice squad to be the backup to Brent Hundley. The PUP list is actually interesting because we are now entering week 7. And if you remember how the PUP list works, anybody that was on the PUP list at the start of the season has to wait till week 7 to become active again. The trick is that if you activate them to practice at that time, you have to get them on the roster of 53 within 3 weeks. So by week 10 in this case. And the one name that we haven't seen all season from a defensive perspective is Vince Beagle. So now if Vince can get out on the field, that'll help out the defensive situation. I don't think they activate him this week. I think they activate him after the bye so that he can get the full week of practice in there, and then he'll be ready to go, again, assuming that he's healthy. So I'm just saying that this is the week where he could be reactivated potentially.
Oh, okay. We just don't know whether or not he's up to the task just yet.
Correct. And we won't know how that's going to work until they actually make the transaction to put him on to the 53.
And
so
obviously,
keep an eye on that.
Nothing's going to happen as far as Aaron Rodgers till after the surgery that he's going to have on that shoulder, that collarbone.
Correct.
And then they'll make the decision, and we will be waiting with bated breath to find out how that all goes.
Now, because Callahan gets promoted from the practice squad, we need to backfill a quarterback on the practice squad. So Jared Evans actually joins the practice squad. He was a 2017 rookie out of Virginia Tech, was drafted by the Eagles before being waived with an injury, and was not on the roster during OTAs or training camp this past start of the season. But during the 2016 season, Evans at Virginia Tech did complete 63.5% of his passes for 3,500 yards, 29 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He also added 846 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns on 204 carries. So on paper, stats-wise, he looks like a Packers quarterback in a lot of ways. So then he's going to be taking over Callahan's spot on the practice squad. So we'll see how that all shakes out as time progresses.
And being on the practice squad, he does get to do all the practices with the team, right? He just isn't suiting up on game day.
Correct. Yeah, he's not one of the classified 53.
So he can start learning our offense and getting ready just in case. The highlight of the week for me, as far as in the news media, was the fact that these people are on this stupid Colin Kaepernick bandwagon, even some people on the Brett Favre bandwagon. Oh, Tony Romo. I mean, keep Tony in the booth. He's doing awesome. Anyway, McCarthy's doing a press conference, and a reporter, after McCarthy already explained what we're doing, I don't know why so many reporters don't pay attention, and asked if the Packers might seek out Colin Kaepernick. And the way McCarthy answered with, "Did you just listen to that question I just answered?"
He was angry.
He was. You know, I got 3 years invested in Brett Hundley, 2 years invested in Joe Callahan. The quarterback room is exactly where it needs to be. Okay, we're fortunate to have a quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. We're committed to the path we're on. We need to play better as a football team. That's an understatement, Mr. McCarthy.
Yes, but the key is it's a team, right? It's 22 positions, 11 on offense, 11 on defense. It's not just one. So,
sometimes I wish we had 12 on defense and maybe only 10 on offense, but I guess we'll keep it 50-50.
Yeah, so he was pretty PO'd.
So we know exactly where the Packers and Mike McCarthy stand in regards to bringing in outside, undrafted former stars.
Now, if you ask us, if you're going to bring in Kaepernick or Romo or Tebow or whoever you want to come up with, we won't be as angry with you, but we're just going to be like, we'll just deflect and send you the link to the tweet because it's pretty fun. Given Rodgers does have that broken clavicle, though, one ways to fix it is to actually have surgery. Now, surgery is actually potentially a good thing. I mean, when you hear surgery, you kind of like, eek, end of the season. Now, this is a different kind of surgery. It actually helps speed up the recovery slightly because what they do is they put a plate above the clavicle, above the collarbone with some screws, and that helps hold the bone in place so that the bone can heal faster rather than having the bone heal naturally with a sling and other things, because really collarbones, not much you can do with it. You can't cast it. You can't do that kind of, put it in compression or anything. You just literally have to put it in a sling and hold it in place and pray it heals. And sometimes it heals in 4 weeks. Sometimes it heals in 6. Sometimes it heals in 8. Just depends what type of collarbone fracture it is. Now, we didn't have access to the x-rays, obviously, and we're not doctors, but found some interesting information about this surgery. And the fact that the Packers haven't placed Rodgers on IR yet is actually a good sign because of the 8-week commitment. If that was the case, Rodgers could come back as early as week 14. If you think about the 8-week recovery time, maybe that's a little bit optimistic. Maybe it's more like week 16. Because that would give him an extra two weeks to heal up. But the surgery, I think, is the best option to get him back on the field as quickly as possible. This, of course, all depends on rotator cuff and throwing mechanics and things of that nature. But we had a really great article that we'll have up at the show notes, PackersFanPodcast.com/142. We'll have a link there to the San Diego Tribune sports doctor medicine group who actually walked through the injury and explained it in great detail. X-rays of some other former players that had broken collarbones, etc. I think it's a really fascinating piece. So definitely check that out. Again, PackersFanPodcast.com/142 for a link to that story.
Yeah, and it totally makes sense to me where surgery is actually a brighter future, because my son had a broken collarbone a few years ago from snowboarding. He elected not to get surgery because he's a grown adult, and he kind of regrets it at this point because it took forever to heal, and he says he cannot imagine trying to throw a football with a broken collarbone. So speedy recovery, Rogers. We don't want to rush you back for week 14. If we can keep things rolling, week 16 would be just fine.
Yeah, I broke my collarbone as well, and I regret not doing something similar because I let it heal on its own. And actually, if you look at it, it didn't heal. Normally, the collarbone goes straight across, right, from the below your neck over to your shoulder.
In most
across.
Humans, yeah.
And mine actually, when you get to the break point, from there it actually goes down towards the bicep.
Ouch.
From that part, so it never really healed straight. It healed, but it just looks kind of ugly sticking out of my chest.
Bones do crazy things.
Hey, as long as my arm's still attached, that's all that matters.
That's true. That's true. You can still operate podcasting equipment and do all your magic on the computer. You're good to go.
I get a yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the Saints then in our keys to the game. Now, after defensive scoring bonanza last week in Detroit, I think step number 1 this week is going to be able to protect Brett Hundley. Saying Brett and a quarterback is like deja vu.
I know. It's like, did he really come out of retirement? Oh, wait.
Is his name really Brett? And is he really wearing number 7? It's like 2 of the best things, especially from the likes of one Cam Jordan. Yes, Cam is a beast on the New Orleans defensive side of the ball. The offensive line will need to dig deep, so deep that there's a little trench between the lines for the Saints to either fall into or at a minimum trip on as they come across on the snap.
Okay. I'll be looking for that.
But yeah, protecting Hundley is key number 1, especially against that defense that was just all over Stafford last week. Again, in New Orleans, so we'll have to see how that goes. But the big shock, I think, from last week was that now that Adrian Peterson is out of the way in New Orleans, Mark Ingram just exploded last week. Now, I would prefer that he goes for 200 yards and a few touchdowns as long as we still win the game, because I have him on 2 of my fantasy teams.
Oh.
But I think we need to make sure we understand what it means to protect the run game again. So the front 7 are definitely going to have their workout cut out for them, and Daniels is back. So I think that with the right mix, we could look more like the Seattle game and get back to holding them to 3 yards a carry on the run side of the ball. That would be fantastic, but let him get at least a touchdown because I need some points.
Oh my.
And then, of course, a short pass, I should say. Shot pass is different. A short pass is as good as a run, I think, this week, right? With the O-line depleted and the running game suffering a little bit because of that, I don't think the run game is going to be as featured. What I think we need to have happen is have enough people coming out of the backfield for the check down. So Ty Ripkowski sneaking through the middle, looking for the dump-off pass. I think that's going to be just as good as a run game this week. So don't be afraid to take the check down, Brett. It's there. I saw it open a couple of times, actually, during the Minnesota game, where a simple check down would have netted 10 yards. So definitely look for the check down passes this week. And then finally, the cornerbacks and the pass rush. Drew Brees doesn't have the weapons that he used to have in the past, but he's still a pretty dang good quarterback. So we need to pressure him early and often to create the opportunities for Demaryius and those linebackers to pick off the balls, because I think we're going to need a defensive or special team score this week to put the icing on the cake.
Agreed. In fact, maybe we will do turnaround on the Saints and get a safety against Drew Brees.
I'd prefer the fumble touchdown personally, but safety will work too.
Okay, let's make a deal. How about we just do both?
There you go.
Great keys to the game, Troy. I think with those in place, if we can implement those, victory shall be ours. Now, the official Green Bay Packers dope sheet is out and is expected. It's all about the Saints at Packers Week 7 game. We will link to it at PackersFanPodcast.com/142. Speaking of 42, the 4-2 Green Bay Packers. That's right, we're still 4-2. So there, we are home at Lambeau Field, hosting the 3-2 Nolans Saints Sunday at high noon Central. And after back-to-back away games, the Green Bay Packers will host the New Orleans Saints in the first noon home game this season. This season's almost half over.
I know. I'm telling you, this is the whole thing. Now that Aaron Rodgers is done, it all goes back to noon. We lose the 3 o'clocks. We lose the 7 o'clocks. Just plan on getting up early on Sundays from the rest of the season.
Well, consistency will be nice and could help the team as well. Overall, the Packers are 10-2 at home against New Orleans.
I like that.
And most of the other stats I read about are kind of out the window while AR-12 is out recovering, so we'll leave those be. The Packers will have a bye in Week 8. It's the latest bye week Green Bay's had since 2014 when we had a Week 9 bye. And after the bye, Green Bay will play consecutive games against NFC North opponents, which could be huge in the final standings. In Week 9, we will host the Detroit Lions on Monday Night Football, so it's like a bye week and a day. And then we face the Bears in Chicago in Week 10. And without Aaron Rodgers, I'm not going to say that's a bonus bye week. It is what it is.
I'll be there, so I'll cheer as loud as I can.
Oh, it's official. You're going.
I'm going.
You're rooting for the Packers, right?
I am working for the Packers.
Deep in enemy territory. Love it. Notable connection from the dope sheet this week. Packers head coach Mike McCarthy served as the Saints offensive coordinator from 2000 to 2004. I almost forgot about that. That was so dang long ago.
No doubt.
Packers guard Jari Evans spent the first 11 seasons of his career with the Saints, earning 6 Pro Bowl selections and ranks second among offensive linemen in Saints history with 169 games played. And Packers quarterback Joe Callahan spent time on the Saints' active roster last season.
Sure did.
Join us in being ready for Sunday's game by reading the full official Packers dope sheet for the Saints-Packers game. Again, linked at PackersFanPodcast.com/142.
Yeah, it'll be 50% chance of rain on Sunday, so hopefully that won't be too bad. But 63 degrees, holy cow, it's like summer up there in northern Wisconsin. Wow, that is warm for this late in the year. We're looking at New Orleans getting 6 points with the Packers at home, so that's an over-under of 48 for the betting line. So this is interesting. The Packers are still 6-point favorites, even with Hundley under center.
Unbelievable.
And obviously, we were way off on our scores last week.
Yeah.
I guess I get to go because I had Vikings 24.
True. You actually guessed closest to the Vikings score. So go for it, Troy. What do you see this week? Boy, this is going to be a tough one to even come close to getting right without just sheer luck.
I feel this will be like a Dallas contest, and it's going to be Mason Crosby for the W. Packers 23, Saints 21.
I'm glad you're calling for a victory. That's an awfully close game. Pretty high scoring compared to, I just don't see much happening in this game. The fact that we get out with a victory will be good enough for me. I think Packers also, just like you said, Packers are going to win by 2, but it's Packers 17, Saints 15. But a victory.
That safety or that 2-point conversion or something. I'm trying to do the math.
Whatever it takes. Safeties, 2-point conversions, all those things, none of those things. Just squeak out a victory and head into the bye week with a win and less injuries. And I'm all for it.
It's a critical win because if we can win, I mean, they're 3-2, so they're right behind us in the NFC standings from a playoff perspective.
True.
So a win this week is like winning 2. So definitely want to make sure we take that. Otherwise, we're playing from behind by a lot of people in the NFC. Come those tiebreakers when we end up 8-8 or 9-7,
or 14-2.
Could be.
Worst case scenario, 13-3.
I can't remember what I said, but did I say 13-3 or 12-4 when we started the year? I thought it was 13-3.
As long as we're still predicting Super Bowl championships, I'm all for it.
Whatever it takes. Hey, last time we won it, we were the 6th seed, so anything's possible.
And if we're the 6th seed, we might be coming to LA. Maybe you should do your LA. I knew you were just here a few months ago, but make your another LA appearance.
If they play LA in the playoffs, then I am definitely coming out there.
All right. We'll find some good seats. We want to send out some thank yous, huge thank yous, because of our Patreon supporters really helping out making the Packers Fan Podcast even better than ever. for you all. And even though AR-12 is recovering from that terrible injury, he is number one in our hearts. Much like brand new Packers Fan Podcast Patreon supporter Aiden Cassidy, pledging support of the podcast at the Aaron Rodgers $12 level. You are truly an MVP-worthy Packers fan, and we're trying to coordinate with you to get your hearty Go Pack Go to play in the outro of the podcast.
Yes. At the $12 level, you get to say the Go Pack Go to close out the show. So if you're already contributing, go ahead and bump up your level. If you're not contributing yet, very simple, patreon.com/PackersFanPodcast, or better yet, PackersFanPodcast.com/support. Much like our good friends down in Texas with the Texas Only Green Bay Packers Fanatics Facebook group. They're still sponsoring us at the Brett Favre level because they never give up. And Jeff Summerfield as well. He gets a GeForce MVP Favre-tastic thanks for supporting at the Brett Favre level as well.
Yes, and even though Brett Favre is still retired, we honor him in that way. Also, continued thanks and hearty Go Pack Goes go out to Alex J. at the Curly Lambeau appreciation level. Thank you so very much for Patreon supporting the Packers Fan Podcast, telling friends about the show, leaving reviews in iTunes, whatever you got.
Yeah. Make the podcast even better. Again, PackersFanPodcast.com/support. Remember, if you can support us at the Reggie White level, you get to go to a game next year. Otherwise, just check out all the great opportunities you have. Just saying Go Pack Go on the show or even doing the opening is kind of fun. So definitely make that happen if you're interested. $12 a month, people. Really, really simple. Just give up a couple Pops or a couple Starbucks. $12 a month is nothing. It's a Netflix bill.
That's true.
All right. Well, thanks again to Alex J., the Texas Only Packers Fan Fanatics, Jeff and Al, and of course, all the people that listen to the Packers Fan Podcast every single week. Remember, Packers Fan Podcast Community Facebook group as well. You could go ahead and go over to there at PackersCommunity.com to keep the conversations going, because unfortunately, we're not injured. We'll be back next week. We're fine. But for this week, the Packers Fan Podcast that's unofficial is not affiliated with the NFL, the Green Bay Packers, in any way, shape, or form. But unfortunately, it is over for this week. But don't forget to become one of those faithful MVP supporters. Again, PackersFanPodcast.com/support to make that happen.
And remember to take us on the go with you. We have that free Packers Fan Podcast app. We got one for iOS. We have one for Android. Download that. It's the easiest way to consume the podcast, to be part of the show. And follow us on Twitter for that weekly Monday Twitter poll at PackersFanPod. You can also follow my personal account, all sorts of shenanigans or random things I post there at Wayne Henderson. And Troy, I think you're on Twitter as well.
I am at Troy Heinrichs, and just want to say that the phone line is always open. So if you are feeling bummed about something or hear some crazy Tim Tebow rumor, just pick up the phone and call 920-3PACK-GO. That's 920-3PACK-GO to get your voicemail in. We'd love to hear from you. Play it on the show. We'll talk about it. It'll be a blast.
Remember, we want to hear your feedback. You can go to PackersFanPodcast.com/feedback and get in your feedback and be part of the next episode. Keep those conversations going online. We'll be back very soon with another episode of Packers Talk. But until next time, thanks for listening to this edition of your Packers Fan Podcast.
Make sure you subscribe in Apple Podcasts, even if you listen somewhere else, because it does help out the show, and leave a review in Apple Podcasts as well. Now, let's go ahead and give all the support to Brett Huntley, the offensive line, and the quarterbacks we can. You can do it real loud now. Cheer together. Go Pack, go!